So I just want to respect your time as I appreciate your joining us. So we're going to get started promptly. What I would like to do, though, is give Jennifer Dewey from the Denver Public Library a moment to speak with you. She and the library very graciously helped us organize this webinar and are hosting it for us this evening. So Jennifer, if you'd like to take a moment to speak with our guests, that would be wonderful.
Hi, everyone. We wanted to say thank you very much from Denver Public Library to Maya and Molly for helping us organize this event. We are really excited to start dipping our toes into virtual programming. This is one of our first, so we're thrilled to have Maya here, and I'm going to let her do her own introduction about her background and her resume. Thanks also for letting me do a little bit of a plug for Denver Public Library. With everything going on right now, we're still offering all of our services that we normally do, movie streaming online for free, downloadable books, magazines, audio books. But in addition to that, we've started doing virtual story times. You can make an appointment one-on-one with a librarian to talk about anything really, but including small business help. And we recently just started subscribing to Udemy, which is an online learning platform where you can learn everything from coding to drawing and everything in between, which is free with a Denver Public Library card. So you can access all of that online at denverlibrary.org. So thank you again, Maya. I'll turn it over to you.
I really appreciate the Denver Public Library hosting this event tonight. And I thank you, those of you who have joined us, because we're here really to talk about a new pathway for environmental protection and a pathway that I hope will be of interest to the people of Colorado. But with that, let's get started. So just a little bit about myself. I am here really wearing two hats. My first hat is as the Delaware Riverkeeper and the leader for over 25 years of a 4-state organization known as the Delaware Riverkeeper Network. We're an organization that does advocacy and litigation and very literally fights the good fight for our beautiful Delaware River and all the tributary streams that feed it. But as an outgrowth of that work, I've also come to wear this second hat, and it's the founder of a new national movement that we call Green Amendments for the Generations, and was all launched with the writing of my book, The Green Amendment. The Green Amendment for the Generations is all about helping to forge this new path of environmental protection, one that truly recognizes and protects the right of all people to pure water, clean air, a stable climate, and healthy environments. And people often ask me, well, why do we need that? Why do we need a new path? Well, we need a new path because the current path is resulting in far too many people continuing to be harmed by environmental pollution and degradation. We have communities across our nation that are drinking contaminated water, that are breathing contaminated air, that are forced to become hosts in their communities to highly polluting industrial operations and contaminated sites. We have an increasing number of communities that are suffering the ravages of climate change, and we continue to have communities of color, indigenous, low income, and immigrant communities who are unfairly targeted for highly polluting industrial operations. And we continue to have plant and animal species that are suffering as a result of the very legal activities of people. And this story is not just other states, right? The kinds of things that we're talking about are happening, do happen in the state of Colorado. The state of Colorado is being deeply impacted by the oil and gas industry. There are communities in Colorado with drinking water that is contaminated with a variety of contaminants, including a family of man-made chemicals known as PFAS that can be highly toxic to those who are consuming it. Communities in Colorado find themselves host to toxic sites, whether they're designated as being toxic or hazardous by federal law or state law, it really doesn't matter. If they're in your community, they're dangerous and damaging. The American Lung Association has identified a number of portions of Colorado that get a D or an F rating when it comes to air quality. And of course, Colorado too has its own species that are being impacted by pollution and degradation. And people always ask me, right, wherever it is I am, whenever they hear or learn about the dangerous pollution and contaminants in their community, in their state, or that's happening in our nation, inevitably, they always ask me the question, why? Why? How is it possible that this is happening to us? After all, when people go to a rally, an environmental event of any kind, inevitably at some point or another, directly or indirectly, people will allude to the fact or say or assert that we people here in the United States of America have a right to clean air, or a right to clean water, a right to healthy environments. And the truth is that while here in the United States of America, we have a lot of rights, the rights to free speech and freedom of religion, the right to bear arms and private property rights, we do not, in fact, have a right to a healthy environment. We don't have a right to clean water and clean air, a stable climate, or to healthy environments in states across the United States of America. Here in the US, primarily the way our environment gets protected for the benefit of us and others is through the passage of local, state, and federal laws. Unfortunately, these laws, the way they're crafted and the way they're implemented, is they really accept pollution and degradation as a foregone conclusion. And they focus themselves, these laws focus themselves primarily on how are we going to permit, how are we going to manage pollution and degradation in our communities, in our state, and across our nation. They don't focus on forcing government officials to first work to prevent pollution and prevent degradation. And as a result, people and environments and our planet are being harmed because of the actions and activities that are very legally allowed to advance in communities across our nation. And when this happens, when these laws are passed and when these laws are implemented in a way that results in legal pollution and degradation, the truth is that people are really left with few options, especially if the laws are implemented the way they're supposed to be implemented, which often they are. There really are few options for people, few pathways they can take to address the resulting environmental harm. Inevitably, the biggest step they are forced to take is to try to change the politics that is happening in their community, that is happening in their states. Try to get new people elected to office that they believe will do a better job of passing better laws or better implementing the laws that are on the books in a way that will better protect the environment. But fundamentally, if the law is being properly advanced, there's really not much else people can do except try to get new leaders into office that will change the environmental landscape in their community or in their state. Now, the thing is about a green amendment, if you have a green amendment in your state, it really is a transformational tool that can help you better protect the environment, better ensure environmental protection in your community, in your state, and across our nation. So what is a green amendment? A green amendment is very literally an amendment that gets added to the Bill of Rights section of the state constitution and recognizes and protects the inalienable rights of all people, regardless of the color of their skin, their ethnicity, their income level, all people, the right to pure water, clean air, a stable climate, and healthy environments. And if a green amendment is properly framed and properly implemented, it will not just protect those rights for the people who are here today, but it will also protect those rights for the generations yet to come. If a Green Amendment gets added to your state constitution and gets passed, there are a lot of really important things that will happen to help advance environmental protection in your state. But before I go on to identify a few of those things, I just want to be clear. A Green Amendment is not an instant panacea, right? All the bad environmental stuff that's happening in your state isn't going to instantly evaporate and disappear. But if you get a Green Amendment in your state, you get the most powerful tool, a constitutional tool that you can use to protect the environment and the environments within your communities. A very important thing about a Green Amendment is the Green Amendment is not a grant of new authority to government officials in your state. What a Green Amendment does is it says to the government officials in your state, when we give you permission to reign over us as government bodies, we are telling you that we are holding unto ourselves to be protected from your interference, to be protected from infringement by you. We are holding a whole slew of rights unto ourselves. The right to bear arms, free speech, private property rights, due process rights, and now the rights to pure water, clean air, a stable climate, and healthy environments. It means that we are saying to government, when you are engaged in your government activities, you must carry forth that work in a way that does not result in an infringement on our constitutional right to a healthy environment. And as a result, it means that our environmental rights are protected on par with, in the same way that we protect those other fundamental freedoms we hold dear. I mean, think about things like the right, private property rights, or due process rights, or free speech rights, or the right to bear arms. When those rights, when government takes an action directly or allows somebody else to take an action that infringes on any one of those constitutional rights, think how powerfully communities rise up to defend those rights from government infringement, right? People don't sit down and take it. They rise up and they battle because they have a constitutional right to these fundamentally human, political, and civil rights that we, all the people, hold dear. Well, that same kind of legal strength and passion of the people now comes to bear on the rights to a healthy environment. It becomes very, very powerful. Constitutionally, the government now, when it engages in its government activities, in the passage of legislation, the issuance of permits, the creations of and implementation of policies and programs, it must from the get-go consider how it is going to protect the environmental rights of all the people, which means it must focus from the beginning of the decision-making process on how it is going to prevent harm to the environmental rights of the people of the state. No longer can thinking about the environment and environmental impacts be left to the end of the decision-making process when, frankly, it is largely too late. A Green Amendment requires that, or mandates, that every government official at every level of government protect and defend the constitutional right of all the people to a healthy environment. And again, it must do so not just for present generations, but for the future generations yet to come. A Green Amendment is very powerful when it comes to environmental justice, because when you have a Green Amendment, the rights of all the people, again, regardless of their race, their ethnicity, their religion, how much money they make, where they live, what are their physical or mental capacities, everybody in the state has the same right to a healthy environment. And so as a result, all of the government officials must protect all of the people equitably. No longer can we have environmental sacrifice zones where we allow government to burden one community with all of the environmental ills that government officials want to foist upon us so that they can protect some other community and the environmental benefits that they cherish. Again, no longer can we have environmental sacrifice zones because all the people must be protected equitably. Now, today, we actually have 2 states, but we only have 2 states that have a green amendment of this kind. We actually have a whole host of states that talk about the environment in their constitutions and in a variety of different ways, but only 2 of them recognize and protect the inalienable rights to pure water, clean air, a stable climate, and healthy environments in the same way we recognize and protect those other human, civil, and political rights we hold dear. And of course, we don't have a constitutional environmental rights amendment, a green amendment in our federal constitution. Now, what does Colorado have? Colorado is one of those states that actually has quite a bit of language when it comes to the environment and environmental protection. But this language is not located in the Bill of Rights section of the state constitution. And it does not recognize and protect the inalienable rights of all the people to a healthy environment. It talks about, when it talks about water, yes, it does talk about the water being the property of the public, but then it focuses much more on how are we going to appropriate the water to different parties. Or perhaps it talks about the preservation of forests and the lands of the state, but it talks about doing that through the passage of state laws. Well, if your state passes bad laws that allow tremendous devastation of your forests or of your water, your constitutional right has been vindicated, but truly you're no better off. You're back to the beginning of the talk where we talk about the passage of bad laws that don't do the job of good environmental protection, and all that's left for the people to do is try to elect better people into office who will do a better job. So Colorado does not at this time have a green amendment, but certainly the people of Colorado could choose to change that. How has a green amendment benefited Pennsylvania and Montana? Now, of course, you can look at those 2 states and you will see that all is not right when it comes to the environment in each of those states, despite their having a green amendment. But that's because truly we're really at the beginning of seeing the benefits and the values of a green amendment in those 2 states for different reasons. First and foremost, before I get to the legal benefits in those 2 states, I do just want to talk about the fact that not only are green amendments a powerful tool when it comes to environmental litigation, but they are a powerful tool when it comes to environmental advocacy. Because when people know that they have a constitutional right to pure water, clean air, a stable climate, and a healthy environment, it truly is empowering for them as advocates in their hearts, right? It changes the way they view what they're doing. It changes the way they feel about government when government gets it wrong and results in decisions that result in tremendous environmental degradation. Sorry, something has happened to my presentation. Let us go back. Okay. Anyway, so when we have a green amendment, it's very empowering for environmental advocates. And not only is it empowering for the advocates themselves, but it also changes the way others view environmental advocates in the state. No longer can people lightly dismiss environmental advocates as tree huggers or fish lovers, right? Now, environmental advocates are recognized as people who are rising up to defend a constitutional right. And whether or not people agree with you or disagree with you with what you are doing when you are engaged in advocacy, if you are advocating for a constitutional right, people hold you in much higher regard than when you're advocating for something that they feel is lesser than a constitutional right, different than perhaps just something that is feel good to them as opposed to others. But environmental green amendments have tremendous power when it comes to litigation as well. This is Pennsylvania's green amendment, and it is in Article 1, the Bill of Rights section of the Pennsylvania Constitution, Article 1, Section 27. And as you can see, it recognizes that the people have a right to clean air and pure water and to healthy environments. And it recognizes the duty of government officials to protect those rights. Now, while Pennsylvania's Green Amendment was actually placed in the Pennsylvania Constitution in 1971, it wasn't until 2013 when Pennsylvania's Green Amendment actually got legal life. In fact, between 1971 and 2013, Pennsylvania's Green Amendment had been discounted as just a statement of public policy by the Pennsylvania courts. And so it was really beautiful language that was on the books in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but legally it didn't have any strength. But then something changed. In 2012, there was a very pro-fracking piece of legislation that was passed in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Now, fracking was already advancing in Pennsylvania and having devastating consequences. But the passage of this 2012 law, known as Act 13, was about to make fracking dramatically more devastating. It gave the fracking industry the power of eminent domain in certain circumstances. It gave them automatic waivers from minimal environmental protection standards. It relieved the fracking industry from the obligation to notify private drinking water well users of a potential contamination of their drinking water as a result of nearby fracking operations. And so, as you can see, it was a real gift basket to the industry that was going to allow fracking to proliferate much more quickly, much more violently than it had to that point in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. After Act 13 was passed, my organization, the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, decided that they were going to challenge this law and use as a fundamental basis Article 1, Section 27 of the Pennsylvania Constitution. We were also joined by 7 municipalities who also wanted to challenge the law using a variety of legal arguments. At the end of the day, in December of 2013, we ended up getting the collective, the Delaware Riverkeeper Network and the 7 towns, ended up getting a very powerful decision out of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which at that time was very conservative, rendered a decision in December of 2013 in which they wrote that by any responsible account, the exploitation of the Marcellus Shale Formation, that's drilling and fracking for gas from shale, will produce a detrimental effect on the environment, on the people, their children, and future generations. And that the natural resources that were being harmed were resources that were essential to life and to health and to liberty. And that as a result of that, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court declared that the provisions of Act 13 that we were challenging should be declared unconstitutional because they violated the environmental rights of the people of Pennsylvania. And so in December of 2013, for the very first time, Article 1, Section 27 of the Pennsylvania Constitution, Pennsylvania's Green Amendment, was given legal life, right? And the people of Pennsylvania not only got rid of some of the most devastating aspects of Act 13 that we were challenging in this legal action, but very literally, the people of Pennsylvania had restored to them their constitutional right to a healthy environment. Now, since that victory in December of 2013, Article 1, Section 27 of the Pennsylvania Constitution has been used in a variety of other ways in the advocacy context, but also in the legal context. It's been used to prevent state legislators from raiding environmental protection funds that should be used for environmental protection and not for filling gaps in the general operating budget. It's being used right now to advance drinking water protections. It's been used to prevent the harmful spreading of sewage sludge in communities in ways that would be harmful to the environment. In the state of Montana, where there was also a Green Amendment, that Green Amendment has been used in the recent years to defeat damaging gold mining operations, as well as to protect drinking water supplies from harmful drilling operations, not fracking or fossil fuel drilling, but this was going to be test well drilling, actually for drinking water supplies that put at risk an existing drinking water aquifer that supported an entire community. Now, Montana's Green Amendment was also passed in 1971, but it wasn't until years later, about the year 1999, that Montana's Green Amendment was first used in a very powerful case to defeat a devastating gold mining operation, and then again to protect a drinking water supply from contamination. And then it sort of went quiet for a while. And then again, last year in 2019, April of 2019, suddenly we had another powerful decision out of the state of Montana that resulted in the rescission of a gold mining permit based upon the need to protect the environmental rights of the people of Montana. And so I like to believe that Montana is taking a fresh look at their Green Amendment because of this new national Green Amendment movement we've started advancing since we had our December 2013 victory in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. After we had our Pennsylvania victory, I really took a step back. Before all those other decisions I talked about, I really took a step back and I thought about the power and importance of what we had accomplished for the people of Pennsylvania in terms of truly securing for them a constitutional right to a healthy environment, and how powerfully that constitutional right had been used to protect them from devastating drilling operations. And I realized that there was a really important message in the victory we had achieved, this message that all communities in all states across our nation should themselves have a constitutional right to pure water, clean air, a stable climate, and a healthy environment. And I embarked on my national effort to try to make this happen. I wrote my book, The Green Amendment, but then I started talking with communities in states across our nation, trying to inspire them to want to rise up and seek and secure their own constitutional right to a healthy environment. And since starting this work, I want you to know that we have actually inspired communities in 5 states to get their legislators to propose the passage of their own Green Amendments. We actually have Green Amendment proposals advancing right now in New York, New Jersey, Maryland, West Virginia, and Vermont. And so for you tonight, sitting there in Colorado, the question becomes whether or not Colorado is in a moment in time where the people there can realize that Colorado's current system of environmental protection laws isn't accomplishing the job of fully protecting the environmental rights of the people of that state. And that the best thing they can do to change that is to seek and secure the passage of a Colorado Green Amendment. And so that's my message for you today. I hope it flowed well on this webinar. This is actually the first time I've done this version of the webinar, so I hope you all could follow it. And with that, if Molly, you can open up the phone lines, maybe we can, if anybody has any questions, I can answer your questions. We can have a little bit of discussion here about what could happen in the state of Colorado. And then if you're interested, we could play our little Kahoot game and see how that works and see if we could have a little bit of fun together playing trivia online. So I think the lines are open. If you have a question, just speak up.
This is Jen. I have a question if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Yay. So my question, full disclosure, my husband is in law school right now. So I was extra excited to hear about your work, Maya, but he has recently been studying in New Zealand 2 or 3 years ago. They gave rights to a river. They gave I was curious if you'd studied that and what you think about that and how it compares to a Green Amendment.
Yeah, so that's really in the US, we call that rights of nature, right? And there are other states that have given nature rights. And so to explain that, here in the United States of America, if you see a river that's polluted and you want to do something about it, right? You want to bring a lawsuit to try to enforce the laws that are on the books because you think that they've been violated in a way that is resulting in illegal pollution or degradation of that river. You can bring a lawsuit as long as you can demonstrate, one, that there's a law that gives you the right to bring that lawsuit, right? You have to have a legal pathway in through legislation. And two, you have to be able to show that you were harmed by the pollution, by the degradation, by the illegal conduct that you are asserting. And then if you can show those two things, you can go through the court case. And if you're victorious, great, you're victorious. But if you're victorious, what you get is the enforcement of the law that's on the books. And so if that law allows pollution and degradation to take place at unhealthy levels, which most of our laws, as they get implemented over time, actually do, then you have enforced the law, but you haven't truly protected the environment in the way we're talking about here when we talk about people having a right to clean water and clean air. If you have a rights of nature provision, then what you are saying is that you don't have to have that to be able to demonstrate that there was a person that was harmed by the illegal conduct that you are claiming or that you are complaining about. All you have to show is that a law has been violated, and that violation has resulted in the pollution of the river. And then the river itself, so to speak, gets to go into the courtroom, of course, with a lawyer, and seek to have that existing law enforced, that illegal conduct stopped. So what you've, and there again is if the river is victorious, what the victor gets is the enforcement of the laws that are on the books. But if the laws that are on the books allows pollution and degradation that can over time reach high levels that result in serious pollution and environmental consequences, while you've enforced the law on the books, you haven't necessarily achieved your goal of true environmental protection. So in other words, what rights of nature does is it gives you an easier pathway to get into the courtroom, but it doesn't give you a better legal standard that you can achieve in terms of environmental protection. If the standard is too low, which often it is in the laws that we have on the books here in the United States of America, you are no better off, regardless of how you got into the courtroom, because you're still stuck with the subpar environmental protection laws that we have here in the United States of America. Does that make sense, Jennifer?
Yeah, it definitely does. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay. So again, thank you so much for joining us.